Let me spell it for you. W-I-double-L-I-E. Nobody truer than H-O-V. And I'm back for more. New York's ambassador, prime minister, back to finish my business up.
Welcome to the Marketing Mentality Podcast, the perfect blend of branding, marketing, advertising, and business. My name is Desmond Walker. This is my friend, my brother, my business partner, and now my co-host to my left, Alan Shelton. And we've been running a marketing agency for going on 5 years now. So I figure now is a great time to explain the origins of all of that and really just go into the purpose of the podcast itself. So this podcast is really where we'll have practical conversations that turn into brainstorms, discussions, strategy development, and really just case studying all across the board, interesting stories about brands and companies. So you can look at Marketing Mentality as really business school, but frankly, a lot more interesting, with a lot more practicality and a lot more character and swag to it, frankly. So I'm excited, man. Today is game day. Today is day one.
Yeah, it is. And you put that so perfectly, bro, in terms of timing and being able to do things when you have more experience, more knowledge. And that's what we have now. You know, a year ago when we started this, it was a great idea, you know, but we didn't have the experience that we do now. So I'm super excited to get this started. And basically what this podcast is going to be, everything that Desmond said, but it's for marketers, it's for business owners, it's for culture enthusiasts, people that care about the why behind the why, and you know, the reasons that, you know, these companies succeed or don't succeed, or you know about for hundreds of years, or you just know about 5 years from now. You know what I'm saying? So it's really more than just your average podcast. It's going to be talking about whatever we're going to be talking about. It's very focused on marketing from a culture perspective. So,
yeah, I also just, you know, call out the elephant in the room that you and I both know because we're in this every day, which is that the industry isn't black enough. The marketing, advertising, branding industry is not black enough.
Yeah.
Whether we're talking from a ownership perspective or an employment perspective. And so that's a reality that we're here to change by putting information out into the world that we're privy to because we go to sleep to it and wake up to it, but that we want to expose the world to for really no cost at all.
Yeah, that's very true. So let's talk about it. Like, let's just really get into it. Why, when do we really get started, right? People ask us from time to time, like, how did Narrative come to be? How did you all meet? How did this thing that you created in your head at first become a real life company and an agency?
We both met in college going on, 12 years ago?
Yeah, wow.
And we kind of went on this journey together without even realizing it at the time, that put us into the same jobs. I mean, we probably had 3 or 4 of the same jobs throughout college.
Yeah.
Same fraternity that we pledged together into, and a lot of the same interests. And not only were we students at the time, but we were highly involved at the same time.
Yeah.
So aside from grades, we were focused on throwing events, putting together programming, and things like that, that essentially made us marketers by default. So we, upon doing that, really just realized that if we could get the message and the story right, if we could get the audience right, and if we could get the content right, not only could we convince students to show up and attend events, but we could at times get them to pay for it as well, thus generating revenue.
Yeah. And to your point too, man, college and the students were our first project. It was our first audience. It was our first demographic. And it's the right demographic because it's the demographic that companies and beyond are still trying to reach in different ways. So we, without even realizing it, we had that access, that special access to really reach them, and it worked, right? Yeah.
Let's get super specific.
Yeah.
If you want to just kind of break down the homecoming story.
Okay. So I'll break down the homecoming story. So people that go to college, right? We understand that homecoming, the word homecoming is iconic, it's legendary, it's generational, right? Whether you went to college in 1960 or you're in college now, homecoming is means something, right? It's the pride of your school. So for us, when we went to school, it was the same situation. We were responsible from our organization for making sure that the students had a great experience around homecoming time, whether that's events, parties, right, to do after you're done tailgating, whatever the case may be. So that was our responsibility. So no different. We had an issue though with that because as many institutions and many schools, sometimes it's hard to throw large scale events on actual campus for
When you're black.
especially when you're black, right? Security reasons, just a lot of red tape, a lot of different things, a lot of hoops, for lack of a better terms, you have to jump through.
At SIU Carbondale, where Alan and I attended, this is Southern Illinois. So
Yep.
while Illinois is Illinois, it's at the bottom of the state, and it's a totally different culture than upstate in the Chicagoland area. And throughout the years, SIU developed this reputation for being a party school.
Right.
And Greek organizations, for us, we are alphas, and the Kappas were known for throwing the bigger events. Kappas threw the Kappa Carnival and the Kappa Ball. We threw homecoming, and eventually, kind of as a byproduct of all of that, the university, even before we got there, started to crack down on those kind of events. And so that created the environment that you're describing, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and appreciate that insight as well, because that's a big part of it. So again, before our time, right, a lot of that stuff was already happening, but we obviously inherited that. So fast forward to our time, and it was our moment to kind of put together this event, this experience, this off scale. I mean, it's
Black homecoming.
a black homecoming, all right, a black home for lack of a better term,
For the black students.
for black students. We had to get creative, all right. So me and Dez got together. We were like responsible, like obviously collectively, but we were kind of like we kind of like led like the okay, what we gonna do, how we gonna do it. So long story short, we started scouting locations, right, from regular event spaces and beyond, and everyone told us no, like no, this isn't gonna work. The capacity isn't big enough, whatever the case may be.
You want how many black
You want
students?
how many black students?
In my building?
No, I'm gonna think that's a no.
At
We
what
got
time?
a lot of no's, and time was ticking, right? I think it was we had like a couple weeks.
This was probably like 3 weeks out. So
Yeah.
alphas were known for throwing homecoming, but in those couple of previous years, they just weren't at that scale for the
Right.
reasons in the
So-
environment we were talking about. Right?
Yeah, so we had a couple weeks. So time was ticking, right? And we were like, all right, what are we gonna do? Never thought about giving up. We were just like, all right, who are we gonna talk to next? So I had the idea, right? It was to go to a skating rink, right? We were going. It was the skating rink about 15 miles outside of where we went to, the city that we went to school, right? So 15 miles, 20 minutes or something like that.
Coin, Illinois is like 25 minutes out of
Carbondale, right? So, and when you're a regular adult, 20 minutes isn't bad. But when you're a college student, how are you going to get from point A to point B in 20 minutes, right? So I was like, we'll figure that out. So we reached out to a skating rink, not to have a skating party, but to use all that space, that real estate, to just throw a large scale party. And we pitched it to them, right? A regular pitch, like, hey, we can pay you this much. We're expecting this many students, right? Undershot it a little bit, right? Undersold it. And
We're projecting.
we were projecting, right, on the lower side, and we end up getting the green light. So from there is when the digital strategy started, right? So we knew that overhead and everything that leading to the party existed, right? So ticket sales, right, event space, ticket sales, transportation, everything. So we literally pretty much choreographed the entire thing, pre-sale tickets. Transportations, we hired a bus company to just do rotations.
Yeah, I think it was like 600, 800 a bus.
Yeah.
Because like you said, one thing about marketing is you gotta begin with your audience in mind.
Exactly.
And like he said, freshmen, sophomores, 9 times out of 10 don't have a car on campus.
Right.
So how the hell are we going to get them there? They might even pay for it, but how do we get them there?
Yeah.
So we added that to the overhead.
Added that to the overhead. And then I think it was $800 total for a bus to a couple buses to just rotate from the student center to the actual place where the skating rink was in DeCoin, Illinois. So we did that. We positioned it, made it like almost like a party bus type of feel to it. Like, hey, you from this point to point B, you can turn up, whatever case may be, until you get to the location. Long story short, we sold pre-sale tickets, right, ahead of time. And the moment that I knew that we won in terms of like the digital marketing strategy is we pulled up to the spot, right? We had all these pre-sale tickets sold, right? We covered our overhead plus some, right, with pre-sale tickets. Yeah. And then we pulled up to the event. There was a line still wrapped around the door for people wanting to pay for tickets right away. That means the attention worked, right? And I would say, honestly, bro, like in that moment, that's when, I don't think we realized it then, but that's when we realized like, hey, we can do this, right? We can be on the digital side from school to school, from our school, and get people to come to an experience, to an event, and we can see the results on the other end. How much money did we make that night?
From what I remember counting, all I remember is once that party was all said and done, we had packed that skating rink out and went home or to the Honeycomb Hideout to count the cash. It was upwards of probably $15,000, $20,000.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, that's a bag, as they say now,
right?
Especially when you're in college.
Yeah, exactly.
Granted, that didn't go to us, right? That went to our organization, but it was kind of a realization that, again, if you can get the story right, get that story to the audience, that can generate revenue.
Yeah, and it did. So again, that's where it started. Like that was like the big aha. From there, we went on to work our regular jobs. Right, I was in marketing on the real estate side, while Dez was more direct TV sales. Working for Comcast Spotlight in Champaign, Illinois. So as Dez mentioned, our paths always kind of been aligned a little bit from the marketing space. But in 2019, things kind of changed a little bit, right? Yeah.
So in 2019, this kind of pivotal moment happened where, it's episode 1 when I'm bumping into the mic a little bit. Hopefully that doesn't interrupt the content. But 2019, man, I moved up from my hometown of Champaign, Illinois, where I've been at for the past 2 years, doing traditional advertising, selling TV spots to small and medium-sized businesses, to Chicago. And at that point, I got a job kind of transitioning from the traditional side to the digital side, working for an internet-based company by the name of Groupon. But at the same time, about 4 weeks prior to that, Alan and I registered an LLC named Narratent, which in our head was a way to kind of legitimize something that we were just doing just as a side hustle, just in the background, which was building websites. So at the time that Alan was in DC, he had met a guy who needed a website for, I think, a youth basketball organization.
Ronald Butts is his name.
Ronald Butts.
Ronald Butts.
Ronald. Shout out to Ronald.
Shout out to Ronald, man.
And he came to us with a need, and we built his website. And I think we built maybe one more after that. And it was like that second project that was the light bulb moment where it might have even been Alan that came to me and was like, we might as well kind of just take this a little serious and do it together. You're doing something that's in this same space. I'm doing this. Let's make it official. So we did that kind of with very low expectations other than to get started and to learn. And if we got paid a little something, that was cool. But that in turn kind of snowballed.
Yeah, it did. And it was really proof of concept, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it was $200 or $250 that Ronald was willing to pay us for the website. Yeah. And back then, not even back then, just in general, if you're getting paid for something that you're doing, it's just like, oh, I feel good about that. So from there, Des mentioned 2019, 2020 came, right? And the year 2020 will go down as
I think about over the course of that year or less, we probably, between those couple of projects, built our bank account up from $0 to $1,000.
right.
$0 to $1,000.
Yep.
Which is, you know, a win in many people's books. And it was a win for us because, again, we started with low expectations.
Yeah.
But after a while, we're like, all right, like, what's next? And so I remember, because I was just telling this story to a class the other day, how we got to a point where we wanted to figure out what other skill sets we could add aside from website. And a skill set that's close to web design and development is SEO, something called search engine optimization, which, long story short, is a way to get your website to show up on Google when people are searching. So I'm like, I know about this software by the name of SEMrush.
Oh, yeah.
Let's get it. Like we're not gonna fake it. We're gonna get real hands on. We're gonna learn this software, and that's going to make people want to pay us to do SEO because we know it. The only issue is this software is like $120 or $130, so we got to pay for it.
Yeah.
So that's gonna require about 10% of our bank account a month to do.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I was like, are we sure we're going?
So that was like March 10th of 2020.
Yeah.
And then ironically, March 11th, the pandemic like literally fell out the sky on everybody officially because it got declared a pandemic at that point.
Yep, global pandemic.
So that's when everybody got sent home. That's when the NBA canceled or paused the season indefinitely, and people started to mask up.
Yep.
I got laid off a few weeks later. But the interesting part of my layoff experience was that I didn't really spend a lot of time or really any time crying over spilled milk because we had already gotten our head start like a year ahead of time.
Yep. Yeah, a year ahead of time when the world shut down, right? 2020 will always go down as shifting everything, you know. Yeah. Everybody was at home. If you're watching this right now, you remember when that first moment when you was just like, I don't have to go to work. Everybody thought it was gonna be 2 weeks, and it'll be in 2-3 years. Yeah. Everybody started to think right about their individual stuff, right? Because everybody didn't know if they were going to be working, if it's going to be like this forever. Yeah. So they started thinking about their own passion projects, whether it's in fitness, whatever industry that they wanted to do. What do we do? I think we had our first campaign around websites.
Like right after I got laid off, we just said like, let's put up something on social media that says we'll build a website for $250. I think we probably slashed out 500 and put 250.
We
to make
did
it
a little red
more,
slash,
promotional.
Yeah,
and let's do it. And I think we got probably like 3 or 4 projects out of that.
I think it was a little bit more than that, bro. Like it was, I would say like 5 or 6. Like some we did, some we didn't do. But I think the biggest thing for that, and I think the whole point of it was to get attention, which you even talk about even today. Yeah, we got a lot of attention. Like, oh, I could do a website. It was low cost. Yeah, right. Probably too low in retrospect.
In fact, that was April of 2020.
Yeah.
In May of 2020, I remember through a relationship I had, us getting a contract with a local restaurant here in Chicago to build their website.
Yeah.
And whatever the price was that I gave him, we were building 2 websites because he has 2 restaurants in the same building. I remember going to his restaurant to get that contract signed and get that check. And I think he doubled up what he paid us from whatever it was to like $2,500.
Yeah.
Cause he was like, I talked to my wife and she was like, that's not enough for this kind of work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm like, hold on.
Yeah.
So at that point, that was the biggest check we had gotten was $2,500.
Yeah.
Which was, that might as well have been $25,000 at the time.
Easily. Yeah. So low barrier to entry, like we put that out there just to kind of test it, right? And yeah, at the end of the year, what did we do in 2020?
Yeah, by the end of the year, I want to say we did like, 10, 20,000?
Yeah.
Somewhere in between before the year was over with. I think it was closer to 20.
Yeah.
Had to have been.
Yeah. Between 20 and 30, I would say. I remember that moment being like, oh, shoot, like, hey, you know, it might as well been 300,000. Like, you know, we were so excited to make that amount of money with our side hustle. Yeah.
Which, again, we started with very low expectations.
Yeah.
So starting off, if you had told us we would be able to be doing something that generated $20,000-$30,000, it would have been unbelievable.
Yeah.
In fact, I remember writing on a goal list from that year. The goal was to generate like $25,000.
Yeah.
And I remember us talking about it and you looking at me like,
Yeah.
$25,000?
Yeah. It felt unreal until you started to get closer to it and it happened. Yeah.
Yeah. But fast forward, just to kind of pick this story up
Yeah.
and get into some real stuff. The end of 2020 happened. I kind of took a step back. We both did, to kind of focus more on a full-time job. I got recruited to a marketing agency.
Mm-hmm.
So that was also kind of one of those moments that you can't predict or really control, but sometimes you're in the right place at the right time. And it was an opportunity to really learn how to do what we were 2 toes into, but on a bigger scale. So I spent the year doing that. We slowed down on Narrative for a little while, and then in comes hospital.
A whale is what we call
here in
it.
Chicago that really presented an opportunity to pivot all over again.
Yep. Yeah. So I'll never forget, and maybe we can cut the inquiry up into this in post. Right, the email that we got.
Yeah, we got an email.
Got an email from Yolanda Cartwright is her name, and she reached
Shout out to Yolanda.
Shout out to Yolanda.
Dr. Cartwright.
Dr. Cartwright reached out to us about getting more people interested, getting more Black people interested in getting tested for COVID, because we understand that Black people weren't getting tested. Right, it was out of sight, out of mind for them. Yeah. So they reached out to us and was like, "Hey, can you all help us out with that?" And how did that go, man?
So funny enough, the pandemic turned out to be a curse that turned into a gift for us, because had that event not occurred, we wouldn't have got the big opportunity that we needed knocking on the door to really take our agency and our company serious and full time. So long story short, that's what happened. In the 2-year or so span since that happened, we've worked with, some groundbreaking brands, like household brands like Rush, at least for the Chicago area, to Universal Music Group, building a website out for Lil Baby for a tour he had a couple of years ago, and NBC Sports, which was a pretty cool experience, to more emerging brands that nobody's ever heard of, and it's somewhere in between. So that's what's happened, man. We're having a lot of fun. It's also very hard, and we'll get more as episodes go on into the day-to-day of our business. Let's get into some trends, Alan.
Yeah, let's get into the biggest
Super
trend.
Bowl Sunday.
It is Super Bowl Sunday. Super Sunday is what they call it. I'm personally, y'all get to notice about me as we continue on this journey with this podcast, Marketing Mentality. I'm a huge sports fan, specifically football, right? So this is the biggest day in football, or the biggest day for them, the NFL, but the biggest day for advertisers, branding, everything, money. It's just a big day. All right, Super Bowl is a big behemoth.
The private jet, the PJ
the
industry.
big everybody is in Las Vegas for the Super Bowl this weekend. When you're seeing this, Super Bowl would already happen. A winner would already been crowned. But hopefully we can kind of give some insight and pretty much fortune tell on what happened. Right. So just to give a little bit of background. So last year in 2023, the Super Bowl had 115.1 million viewers.
Wait, hold on, man.
Yeah.
What's the number?
115.1 million viewers.
Okay.
Right? That's a lot, right? That's a lot of viewers. So it's not surprising, right, that advertisers and brands want to get in front of those eyeballs, right?
Yeah.
It's presented by CBS and Paramount Plus this year, right? I'm not sure how many people have Paramount Plus. I actually got Paramount Plus maybe a few weeks ago because I wanted to watch the movie Top Gun Maverick. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but I know it streams exclusively on Paramount Plus, right? So I got it. I'm not going to stream the Super Bowl on Paramount Plus this year. I'm probably just going to turn on CBS and just kind of rock it out. I'm more of like a OG type of thing with that.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing, I'll pass it to you, Des. People that watch this, right, know about the Super Bowl. They know that for the most people that aren't sports fans like myself, I watch the whole thing. They know it for the halftime show, and they know it for the commercials that come with it. right?
Yeah.
And for some reason, right, reasons that they might know, reasons that they might not, the commercials in the Super Bowl hit different.
Yeah.
Why do Super Bowl commercials hit different?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, you're talking creative, right? But let's back
Right.
up for a second and talk this thing called attention.
Yep.
The reason that the Super Bowl is what it is because of all of the attention that it garnered. So those 115 viewers turn into the next sales transaction.
Yeah.
Or the next whatever it is that brand wants the audience to do. So that's what makes the Super Bowl special. Is this isn't your just everyday TV. We all know that TV, like it or not, is a shrinking industry, and so that's that. But the difference is when it comes to live television, sports, award shows, those type of content events, there's nothing like it. So that's what makes the creative what it is, because now's the time to really get people's attention.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So when you think about Super Bowl commercials in particular, you're likely to see a whole lot more humor, right? You're likely to see a lot more surprises. You're likely to see nostalgia. It's very celebrity focused, right? I mean, millions of dollars. I think the statistic this year is that the average Super Bowl commercial for a 30-second commercial is $7 million.
$7 million, yeah.
That's crazy.
That was like over $200,000 a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the killing part is, as I understand it, that's just the ad placement, right? That's what it costs us to get that slot.
Yeah.
That isn't even necessarily how much that creative is going to cost.
Yeah. And they have to, and these brands, like, if I'm a Nike or if I'm who's having some awareness, if I'm an Oreo, if I'm Oreo, right? Oreo, some brands do have an in-house creative team, right? But a lot of times Oreo hires third-party agencies to produce their commercials and their creative for that. So they have to pay somebody else to produce it. So they have to pay for the slot, $7 million, and they have to pay the agency who's going to charge how much you think.
I mean, easily same in the seven figures.
Yeah,
you know what I'm
easy
saying?
in the seven
Depending
figures.
on, I mean, another aspect is, like I said, celebrity. So you're paying for talent,
Their likeness, yeah.
their likeness. You have the effects
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? There's all different elements that goes into
Yeah.
it. So let's say even if that $7 million is combined between the ad placement and the creative, that's still bread.
Right. A lot
For
of
30 seconds of time.
30 seconds of time. Yeah.
So,
It's super interesting, man. So you touched on the thing that makes Super Bowl commercials different is humor, right? What else? What else makes them different?
I'd say, I talked about humor and nostalgia this year because a lot of these commercials get released even ahead of the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
You can find them. A lot of like old celebrities from shows that are no longer airing. New episodes are being reunited.
Yeah.
Another thing we'll get more into like the halftime part is combining the halftime show talent with talent within the commercial, which
Yep.
you've seen this year with the main performer and the brand that's advertising. But I think what also makes it different is, it's a pay to play situation
Yeah.
too. So the industries that make the most are likely to throw the most towards the advertising spend.
Yep. Big bank take little bank, right? So it's like and speaking to that, speaking of pay to play and speaking of like the big brands that have money to spend or want to spend, and we'll get into this a little bit, but do you know the top three brands or companies that have spent the most money on Super Bowl ads in the last, call it 20 years?
Brands or industries?
Brands, just brands. Start with brands and we'll go to the industries.
So if I'm thinking about the top brands that have spent the most advertising money toward the Super Bowl, like in history of the Super Bowl, I'm thinking about the brands that have been around as long as the Super Bowl. Brands like Pepsi or Coke, been around 100 years, is what I would think.
Yeah. I mean, you pretty much hit them. You hit the bottom two. The top one is Budweiser, right? Which is obviously beer, right? It's alcohol. And they actually spend a lot, the most by quite a bit, right? So just to kind of put it in layman's terms, so Budweiser since 1967, which was the first Super Bowl, before they had, all these celebrities and singers, when they had like Disney characters running across the field and stuff like that. Budweiser has spent $470.5 million. $470.5 million.
That's nuts.
On ad, right?
Nuts.
I'm not sure if Budweiser is anybody's favorite beer. I'm not a beer drinker myself, but they spent a lot of money showing up. They actually had an exclusive partnership with the Super Bowl, so that's exactly why they had to.
Is that over a particular amount of time, or
I believe that it was. We'll have to fact check this, but they had a certain period of time where they were partnering directly with the Super Bowl. But we'll look into that. But Pepsi is second with $320 million spent since the first Super Bowl, and then Coke is third at $202 million. Right.
So that's what, like $100 million gap between Pepsi and Coke.
Exactly, and that's quite a bit of money. Yeah.
I do wonder because prior to, I think 2 years ago, Pepsi was the presenting sponsor of the Super Bowl for years. I wonder if that gap has anything to do with that. Like
the halftime show.
Yeah, has Pepsi spent more money because they're the advertiser to kind of get more out of that situation.
And that's huge. Or they just figure like, hey, we're going to have more exposure, so hey, we might as well spend more money like you just said. So it's interesting too. So back to that point. So we talked about individual brands spending the most money. It's directly correlated as well with the industries that are most represented in the Super Bowl as well. So number one is beverages, right? That's the most you'll see, right? Number one is beverages, right? So that's your Pepsis, your Cokes, your Sprites back in the day, whatever. Number two is automotive, right? Cars. A lot of car ads, a lot of whether it's Nissan or whatever car company you rocking with for that particular time. And then number three is technology, right? Yeah. So technology is actually interesting too. When you think technology is vast, right? Just the streaming platform style of technology, yes. The phones, everything, I
mean, even if you look at who's broadcasting this year, it's CBS, but it's Paramount Plus. So that's almost like a marketing ploy in itself.
Yep.
Because what that's telling the audience to do, in theory, is to gravitate to that streaming platform.
Right. Yeah, we're here. We're going to present the sponsors. It's interesting.
So watch how this goes, like in years to come, as we transition out of your CBSs or your NBCs to everything being on a streaming platform.
Exactly. And you're gonna be watching this episode after the Super Bowl. So tell me, as you're watching this, how many ads did you see that included a beverage? How many ads did you see that included automotive cars? And how many ads did you see included technology? Another thing that makes the Super Bowl big, and a lot of is cinema is huge too. A lot of companies, a lot of production companies release their commercials for the new movies that are coming up for the first time, right? So full length commercials are coming out, right? So that's another thing too. So it's interesting, like this whole marketing employee.
I got another one too for everybody that's watching to think about as well. Is it's 2024 and it's an election year, and so one big piece to the picture of TV advertising as a whole is politics during political years.
Yep.
I know that from my experience working for a company that was selling TV advertising. Like election years, them dollars are coming.
Yeah.
And so while I haven't seen much ahead of the Super Bowl, don't be surprised if some of these candidates pop their faces in during the game.
No, hey. Something to look out for. Hey, and when you're watching this, you probably think we're psychic or tell the future, but it's really just
it's the game.
It's
the game we're getting.
And it's common sense, right? If I have all this exposure, why wouldn't I use it to my benefit? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, it's common sense, but like again, going back to the purpose of this podcast is to put people that usually wouldn't think or engineer their brain to be on the lookout for this to do so.
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah. Speaking of which, let's transition to what a lot of people watch the Super Bowl for, which is the halftime show.
The Usher show.
The Usher show. All All right, the Usher concert, as I heard somebody tell me.
Yeah.
Let's actually. I want to talk about a couple things that last year I went to. Actually hosted a Super Bowl party, which I would have hosted this year as well. But one of the people that were at the Super Bowl party was watching the Super Bowl and the halftime show, and Rihanna was doing it, right? Mm-hmm. And somebody said, I overheard somebody say, like, "Dang, Rihanna must get paid a lot of money to perform at the halftime show. You performing the Super Bowl, the biggest show in the world. Like, can you talk about that? Right? Do artists get paid for the Super Bowl halftime show?
No, that's kind
Well,
of.
you said no, they don't get paid.
No.
Okay.
No, more often than not, if at all.
Yeah. They don't. I'm just saying, like, it would be surprising. I'm repeating because it could be surprising some people that they don't get. Why wouldn't you get paid?
Not directly.
Yeah.
But the idea is that, again, this is a platform with 115 million viewers on it. This is a platform with dozens upon dozens of brands attached to it. And so that visibility that's created from that, I'm not saying that I necessarily agree with the theory or not, but it's one that adds value to an artist's whole likeness and image.
Yeah.
So, and even in this case, so Usher is the performer this year. Mm-hmm. Usher is not only performing the Super Bowl, but he's in an ad that you'll see if you're paying attention with Uber Eats this year.
Yep.
So best believe, although he's not getting paid for his performance, that check from Uber Eats this year is probably making up for at least part of that.
Yeah. And it's kind of like we talk about the term perpetuity, right? Mm-hmm. So similar to like if an artist goes on tour, right? Or whatever, like from city to city, they get paid for going on tour, right? Mm-hmm. But the Super Bowl is so big and so vast. No, the artist does not get paid, right? They pay for the production, right? Like your setup and everything like that. And sometimes a lot of artists
come out of pocket
because they want to make it the biggest, the best show that they can. So they're like, I'll pay a little bit of extra so I can have this effect or whatever the case may be. Yeah. But they understand too that even though they're not getting a check, here goes a check for your performance. Yeah. Like you mentioned before, streams go up, right? Whether it's Spotify, Apple Music, their streams are going to go through the roof for their songs that they have currently and even their old songs. So you can expect the Usher Confessions album, watch those streams go through the roof. It might even enter some Billboard or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
and ironically enough, again, Apple Music is now the sponsor of the halftime show.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see, if you're paying close enough attention to it, how there's a thread that's woven in between all of this.
And I want to talk about that too, because the viewers might not know, the Super Bowl halftime used to be sponsored for a long time by who?
Pepsi.
Right.
For years.
So what does that actually mean? Like if I'm a company and I sponsor the halftime show, we see it all the time. What does that mean?
So for Pepsi, it's funny because there's this quote from Steve Jobs that he notoriously, supposedly said to John Scully when hiring him from Pepsi, where he was the CEO at Apple, where he asked John, "Do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life, or come with me and change the world?"
Oh man!
So there's actually kind of a lot of irony there, because to Pepsi as the sponsor of the Super Bowl halftime show, their goal was to sell sugar water, to sell drinks.
Right.
You're in the arena buying a lot of Pepsi, and then you're likely going to buy a lot of Pepsi before and after as well. But for Apple Music, it's a lot different and a lot more layers to their purpose in being there.
Yeah.
So there's the streams, right, which generates music for Apple Music. There's a lot. They'll sell more products, right?
It's the Apple ecosystem.
There's more AirPods that'll be sold, more phones that'll be sold, more MacBooks that'll be sold. So that all kind of goes back to Apple.
Yeah, it does. And just to get a little more layer with that, a brand has to pay to be a sponsor of the Super Bowl, of the Super Bowl halftime show, correct? Right. Like, they have to pay, right? They have to come out of pocket and say, like, we're sponsoring.
Ain't no free lunches.
Right, no free lunches. I think They pay. I think Apple Music pays $50 million a year.
Something, man.
I believe it's $50 million a year, and we'll get if I'm wrong, we'll obviously have it in post. But I believe it's $50 million a year that they pay for the Super Bowl.
$50 million per year.
Yeah, $50 million per year, right? $50 million per year that they pay annually to be a presenting sponsor with a halftime Super Bowl show. Yeah. But again, it's not about how much you pay for that. It's about what the impact you get from that. Yeah. So again, watching this show or watching the Super Bowl, watch how many Apple ads you see. Apple has a new product out right now.
Yep. Apple Vision Pro.
Apple Vision Pro.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is expensive.
It's expensive. It's expensive. We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah. So that's that different layer. So transitioning to product like brands like Apple and products like we just talked about, like Apple and the ecosystem. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Apple Vision Pro, right? Because that's something that people are seeing around the VR headset, which Apple's not calling it a VR headset. They're calling it an experience, right? Like a visual experience.
Yeah, I think it's actually fine timing, and I don't know if this is intentional on Apple's part or not, but they just wrote this out, a couple of weeks before the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So, as I said, the Apple Vision Pro is not the cheapest thing on the market.
Nope.
Even for technology or electronics.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine, that is a certain type of consumer that's going to buy those, at least right now. Mm-hmm. You kind of match that up with the audience of the Super Bowl. Maybe not your person that's at home watching it, because the cost to do that is a whole lot less, but the cost to sit in those seats mm-hmm. is, I believe, like right now, like $10,000 on average at this point for resales.
Super Bowl? Oh yeah, I think it averages like it's like $7,000 like average like ticket per ticket. Yeah,
which we know it could be a whole lot more.
Yeah,
the closer you get down to the grass and the turf. But nonetheless, like even like that arena, I think holds like 60,000 people in Las Vegas.
Yeah,
so you put 60,000 butts of people that are not just everyday people, but are probably more affluent, mm-hmm. more well off. They do something for a living that put them into those seats.
Yeah.
That's a little different, right?
Yeah.
So that's a great audience to put an above average price point in front of.
Yeah, exactly. People that buy Chanel, Louis, Gucci don't ask what the cost is, right? Yeah. It's a luxury brand, so you know you have to pay luxury cost. Yeah. So that's what Apple is doing with their price point, right? The Apple Vision Pro, just to break it down, costs $3,500. All right, you can finance it, of course, but it costs $3,500. Yeah, that's way more than what a Meta Quest costs, which is like closer to $300, $400, something like that. But
and lastly, I think just to call out what the actual product is and does, the Apple Vision Pro is something that is really, we'll see how this goes because we can't fully predict the future, but it'll be game changing to how we experience really life mm-hmm. as we know it, because this is basically a phone, a computer. This is technology on steroids.
Yeah, it is. And one thing that Apple has always done well is their ecosystem. You know what I'm saying? From their
ecosystem is a strong word.
Yeah.
What are you saying?
Ecosystem is a strong word. So the same way if I have an iPhone, I can copy something from my iPhone and hit paste on my MacBook, and it will automatically know that.
You can do that with your eyes, right?
You can do that. Yeah, you can do that with your eyes. You can literally share what you are showing on your MacBook into the screen and make the screen as big as you want. Yeah. Right? It will convert it. So the ecosystem is what always has made Apple great. Whether you like Apple or hate Apple, their ecosystem kind of keeps you tied in. Right? Mm-hmm. If I have an iPhone, Apple Music is automatically on my phone, right? It's the music button, you know. So that's one thing that I think will separate the Apple Vision Pro, because it's, again, they've made it into their ecosystem. Yeah, and a lot of people already had the products.
Yeah. So today shall be fun, as it always is every year. Again, both from a sports perspective to a music and entertainment perspective, and then for our case, an advertising and marketing perspective. So. Other than that, man, I think, what we want to do is leave you with just something to think about going forward after this episode, which is really to get into the industry, As we alluded to already, this is a space that we want to bring closer to our culture and beyond just surface level logos and, names and whatever else, but really get into the world of marketing, media, and advertising, both from a creative perspective, but also a strategic perspective, and especially, it's 2024, a technology perspective.
Yeah.
These are spaces that we can be in and we deserve to be in. And we see ourselves as marketers, as agency owners, as having a responsibility to help you get there. So that's what this is all about. And we'll see what comes up next.
Yes. So she's out and share our journey, man. Let's get it.